a very good understanding of what fair use actually is, how it affects you on YouTube, how you can employ it. And I'm just going to let everybody introduce themselves. Start over here.
I'm Sarah Urist Green, and I make a show called The Art Assignment that's made in partnership with BBS Digital Studios. And I teach about art being made today and in the past. I travel around the country and I ask artists to give assignments to the audience, and I put what they're doing in art historical context. And then each video serves as a prompt for people to respond.
Good morning, my name is Anita, Sharma. I'm an entertainment lawyer. I am based in New York City, and I work in film and TV, and I also am very lucky to represent some great YouTubers like Lily Singh and Louis Cole. And yeah, I'm here to talk about fair use. I'm amazed that there's so many people here. I thought there was going to be like 5 people. This is great. Thank you for coming.
My name is Matthias, and I make YouTube videos. I graduated from CSUN with a bachelor's in film and stuff like that, so I'm fairly educated on fair use in that kind of context. And yeah, I'm excited to get started. Hashtag make YouTube great again.
So, fair use has been a real hot button topic on YouTube over the past couple of months, which I think is why a lot of you are here. I think we all know what we want fair use to be in the digital age, and the problem is there's a lot of misconceptions. A lot of people really have a lot of misunderstanding of what it actually is and how it actually functions. And so I'd like to go over the basic talking points of what exactly fair use and exactly how you need to employ it when you're approaching YouTube. Anita, if you go over that for us.
Sure. So fair use is a defense to copyright infringement, and it's actually codified. So there is the Copyright Act, and it lays out 4 main points that courts will consider when they're looking at fair use cases. And so the first point is like they're looking at the purpose and the character of the use. So basically, is it commercial, is it non-commercial, is it transformative, or is it derivative? And all that means is if it's transformative, it gives the work new meaning. Derivative means you're just pretty much copying somebody else's work and you're not giving it any new meaning. And the second thing they look at is the nature of the copyrighted work. This isn't as important to them when they consider cases, but basically, the more creative a work, the more protected it is. So movies, music, it's harder to use those types of copyrighted works and claim fair use. And the third thing they look at is how much did you use? And this is basically like, you know, are you taking somebody's entire video, or are you taking 2 seconds of it? How much of the copyrighted work are you using? And the fourth thing they look at is, and this is really important, this is a key point to consider, and that's the effect of your use on the potential market for that copyrighted work. So are people going to watch your video instead of actually watching the original video? And that's a really important point to consider. So those are basically like your 4 main points that you should think about when you're creating fair use videos. Sort of go through these and think about each one in context of what you're doing.
Now, you mentioned commercial use. Now, as YouTubers, a lot of us are hoping to live the dream of doing this for a living, which means we stand to profit. So how exactly, is that always going to be covered as commercial use?
So if your use is commercial, it doesn't automatically mean that you can't claim fair use. And that is actually because, as we know, in the digital world, like it's like the Wild West out there, and everybody is still trying to figure it out, including the court. So just because it's commercial does not mean that you cannot claim fair use. Right. It's just they're going to consider the commerciality of it in light of those other factors that I talked about.
Now, Susan, right?
Yeah.
Sarah, so sorry, my brain is elsewhere today. So Sarah, you mostly make educational material, right?
Yes.
Rather than commercial. But you still are running into issues with fair use all the time, you said.
Well, it's not all the time. Most of the time I just cross my fingers and hope for the best, because I feel good about what I'm doing and I feel good that it's fair use. But yeah, we make a wide variety of videos. We have a series within the channel called The Case For, where I'll take a particular artist or a movement, and in under 10 minutes I'll tell you what their work is and why it's important and why you should care about it. I make a case for them. So I've done this for Andy Warhol, Mark Rothko, Kanye, Yoko Ono, and you know, I feel pretty secure in that I have to show the work, and I want to show the work while I'm talking about it so that I can tell you things and make you value it. So in only one of those instances, I received an email from the Artists' Rights Society threatening that they were going to go to YouTube to take it down. Because I had not applied for licenses to use these images. And we kind of went back and forth, and I made my argument to them, and they were like, no, we're still gonna sue you if you don't, you know, pay these licensing fees. And, you know, after, of course, working with some lawyers and exceeding the cost of those licensing fees they were asking for within a day or two, I made the decision in discussion with our production company to pay the fee. Which was $1,300, and which is, you know, one-off is something that could be feasible within our budget, but we couldn't make the show if we were paying those types of licensing fees.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting about that is the fact that not only are you being transformative because you're educating on each particular set of art, but you're expanding their market potentially. So you're potentially giving them more work, more exposure, so to speak.
Right, but the interesting factor is that for Artists' Rights Society, they sell licenses to the images. So I am harming their market by not paying for it, because then other people will be like, oh, they're not paying the licensing fees, I'm not going to pay the licensing fees. So whose market are we protecting?
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting.
Yeah, and there's also the commercial aspect, and we just touched on this, but in their mind, they're like, well, you're making money off of your show using our images, and so you should pay us. I mean, I think that's also part of the mentality.
Well, and there's also a lot of confusion, because they'll be like, well, I go to YouTube, I see ads there. What, you know, no matter where they are or whose they are, they're just like, well, somebody's making money, and they don't understand YouTube, so.
And that's one of the things that I think is so important to remember. Like, once you already have an understanding of the legal definition of fair use and how it will stand up for you in a court case if it ever gets to that point, the way that YouTube enforces fair use is not exactly the same, because they are trying to take both creators and copyright holders into place and try to keep a fair and even balance that keeps you out of the court system, that will, you know, try to find the middle ground. And so, Matthias, you've definitely dealt with copyright system quite a bit. I would love it if you could walk everybody through what they can expect from the moment they first get a notification that something's gone wrong, right up to the end, right up to the end.
Okay, yeah, well, it's a process. So basically what happens is, if you make content that has any semblance of anyone else's intellectual property anywhere, you're potentially liable to wind up in a situation on YouTube, especially YouTube, that you will get some type of copyright claim, some type of copyright strike, just simply because the system is so easy to game and fair use is so vague. So it's like, fair use, as we were discussing earlier, is like, it's honestly on a case-by-case basis, and you just have to operate with like good faith and hoping that you're making the right decision. And that obviously comes in line with educating yourself on those 4 tenets, those 4 pillars of fair use. So if you have all of that in your back pocket, you know all of that, and you upload a video, and you know it's fair use because you've educated yourself, and sometimes someone will still come at you and say, hey, listen, I'm going to claim this video because for whatever reason, you're using my content and I don't agree with you that it's fair use. So you'll get an email through YouTube. I'm sure, how many of you guys have done that? Have gotten an email? Yeah. I know Chad Wild Clay right there. Raise your hand, Chad Wild Clay. Go check out his videos. What is it, 111? Yeah, so he just won his 111th claim. So he's probably more experienced than most people here, but you get that email, and essentially what it says is you can either not respond or you can act. And so you go into YouTube and you'll interface with YouTube, and it'll say essentially like, are they correct in saying this is their property or is it yours? So you can either dispute it or just let it sit. Currently now, I think a year ago they may have changed it to where now you have 30 days to make a change. And you can fight it, so if you fight it, then that company then has 30 days to either respond to it. If they don't respond within 30 days, you've won the case. If they do respond to it and reinstate the claim, which they have the full ability to do so, is just like, even if it's fair use, just reinstate that claim, then your next process is to appeal. And you can appeal, and if they reject again, then your next process is to go to court, which most of us don't have money to do, so it just kind of dies right there. Now that appeal process is a little scary too, because there's some language in there that if the company adamantly believes that it's their property, they can then have the choice to either take down the video or let you win. So a lot of times they'll take down the video and your channel will suffer a strike, which essentially neuters your channel if you're in good standing. If you're in good standing, it takes you out of good standing, and then will neuter your channel from, like, I think not being able to put like videos like longer than 15 minutes. I don't know. Does it harm monetization? Luckily, I've never had a strike. Actually, that's not true. I've had a strike. I've had a strike, but that was again it was like a kid gaming the system. Some kid filed a false claim against my copyright video, educating people about copyright.
Wow.
Yeah. And like,
the system
and
was
what's
broken.
crazy
Right.
is that like no information was needed for them to do that. So like, and that's why it's kind of scary, and that's why it's really good to educate yourself, because like even when I made that video on fair use on YouTube, I think it scared a lot of people from making content. And that's good and that's bad. It should scare you away from making content, you know, based on other people's intellectual property if you're not under fair use, but it shouldn't scare you away from actually making content that you're passionate about. So,
great answer, okay. So one of the things that I think we always need to keep in mind is that the copyright system isn't a court of law, and court of law is not the copyright system. On YouTube, Content ID is a completely different thing, and it has completely different rules, and there are many people that even go as far as to abuse the system. One of the questions I always get all the time is, why doesn't YouTube do more to protect the creators? And the answer that I've been given to that is the answer that I'll give you, is that YouTube is a slumbering giant. It is a very large machine that has to move slowly and methodically. You know, every creator in here, some of you are already reliant on the income that you get from your videos. Some of us are hoping to be one day. If and when they make the wrong mistakes, that entire system can crumble. It'll be one of the biggest layoffs in history. So YouTube always wants to err on both the side of the creator, but also on the side of the copyright holders. But again, we see people abusing that system. One of the things that they've done recently is made a change to the system where, rather than the claimant getting all of the income that was ever made for that video, the money is now held in escrow until a decision can finally be made. What else do you guys think YouTube could do in the near future, smaller steps, as well as, I mean, obviously bigger steps that force fair use of YouTube's entirety? What smaller steps do you think they could take between now and there?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is that YouTube is protecting creators on both sides. The copyright holder is the creator, and the the younger creator is also a creator. So they're kind of protecting everybody within this whole envelope of YouTube. So I think it is justifiably difficult. I mean, I don't have any practical ideas for how they can help it. I mean, I feel sorry for them that they have to work through it. But I think, I was saying earlier that there has become this culture of fear surrounding fair use and copyright on YouTube, and I think it's really destructive. I mean, I make videos in a field where there's very little video about art on YouTube, and it makes me second guess doing this because I don't want to infringe on people's copyright, but I also think that it's important that we analyze the artwork of our time and talk about it and discuss it. So I think I'm down with fear. Let's play with it and push the boundaries. It's just who's gonna go to court and keep, make these cases so we can function without fear.
So I'll come at it from the other side. I think what Sarah's doing is absolutely fair use, and I think it is ridiculous that you get these notices. I think the problem is there are bad apples out there, and there are people who feel entitled to using other people's work and not asking for permission for that. I mean, when my clients come to me and they ask me if they can use somebody else's work, I always say to them, how would you feel, right? How would you feel if somebody all of a sudden appropriated your work and somehow it seemed like they had created that work? So it is a balancing act. And like I said, unfortunately, there are people out there who feel entitled to use other people's work, and you are not entitled to do that. So, because you didn't create it. And so I think that's important to remember too when you are making these videos, that somebody worked really hard to make something. And so just think about that when you want to use their work.
Yeah, I would say back to what Sarah was saying was that fear. Fear is not something that you want to base your decisions on. And I think one of the ways to eliminate fear from motivating any sort of decision you make in life is education. And I think that's one of the ways YouTube could help a lot, is by properly educating. You know, it could be just simply a page in their creator handbook that could, you know, help a lot of people. Now I'm not sure how many people have read that creator handbook. Raise your hand. Okay, a couple. Well, everyone else should.
It's really amazing.
It's really amazing, yes. I mean, that's one of the first things you should do before you make a channel, is read that creator handbook and educate yourself on just how YouTube works and how to work within their system. Because one of the things that a lot of people forget is that YouTube is a private company. You see with YouTube's recent TOS change, a lot of people are up in arms about the fact that they're being a little bit more strict on what they're defining as like hate speak and bullying and stuff like that, and people are saying that it's squashing free speech, but free speech doesn't exist on YouTube. YouTube is a private company, so it's like, if they don't want you saying something, they have the complete right to censor you, and I think that's what a lot of people are scared to admit. However, that being said, some of the ways that YouTube could potentially help, I believe, potentially help fair use is just within their system. Like, for instance, as I said, someone was able to copyright strike my channel, and it was just someone random filing a DMCA takedown. That was just like, my video was just taken down. There was literally no background checks at all. The information that I was given was completely false. It wasn't even a real address. It wasn't even a real email address. It wasn't even a real name. It was like Imurla Schmitz. and it was like pineapplegaming@gmac.com. Like, not even a real email address.
What?
And I'm like, how does this fly? You know what I mean? Like, so there needs to be like a more filtered process of taking down a claim and making a claim. And had I not had a direct line with someone at YouTube, who knows what I would have done? Because it's incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard to make a connection at YouTube.
And that is something that I really want you guys to know, is that even some of the larger creators like me, I woke up this morning to find that my YouTube channel had been hacked and deleted. I do not have a personal contact with YouTube. It's a company that's very reclusive. It's very difficult. And as a smaller creator, reaching out to YouTube is not something that you can easily do.
You have like 3 million, right?
Right.
Over 3 million subscribers.
Right.
Yeah.
It's still difficult for me to get the answer because
Somebody
they
hacked
work
him
with
earlier,
a fairly
deleted
small
his
crew.
channel.
It's fairly tight knit, and there's millions of us. And so it's impossible for them to be able to do that. So one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that you can always reach out to other people in the community. Someone that I want you to keep in mind is Ethan Klein of H3 Productions. Write that down. I want you to think of Ryan Morris, the video game attorney. These people have put together a legal defense fund to protect fair use. YouTube has also done its fair share, choosing some videos on YouTube that they claim that they will be more than glad to back in court when it comes to fair use. But beyond that, if we're a smaller creator and we have a Stripe, like, what can we do? What is our course of action?
Oh boy. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I'd say, if possible, try your best to not end up in a situation like that. A lot of that, like I'm going back to, is just honestly, it's education. Educating yourself on how to not get yourself into that situation rather than dig yourself out of it. That being said, that's not the question, so I'm cheating.
Right.
But I would say make a video. Honestly, like make a video if possible. You know, playing to your subscribers, asking them maybe if they have any sort of contacts at YouTube or anything like that. You can file. I believe there's a process in which I didn't have to take the process because since I had a contact at YouTube and since I knew that the claim was completely invalid, that I had them fix it on the back end. But she still, even my contact at YouTube, still responded to my email saying, sorry, there's nothing I can do, go through it in the normal channels. And I was like, that's not acceptable. I'm not going to do that. So I didn't do it, but the normal channels would be to just fight that copyright claim. And a lot of times, especially in my case, I'm sure in my case, it still would have worked out in my favor, but it would have taken a lot longer. It wouldn't have taken 2 hours, probably would have taken like a week.
Anita, as a follow-up to that, if I can ask you, let's imagine someone here has decided that they're ready to fight. They are ready to go to court. What can they expect? What kind of cost can they expect? What kind of time frame? Like, can you walk us through the process of what they'll be looking at?
It's going to cost a lot of money to go to court. Like, if you're actually going to go to court. If I had a client that came to me and they wanted help with a fair use claim, I think Sarah made a really good point. She spent more on lawyers than she would have on the licensing fee. So honestly, I would reach out to the copyright holder and I would try to come to some type of resolution. And I was going to say this earlier, but what's really important to realize is that a lot of times artists just want to be asked. They just want to be asked, like they just want you to say, can I use your work? And a lot of people will license you work for very cheap, and it's going to save you so much money in the long run. If you have doubts about using someone's work, it's amazing. Like when you actually just reach out to someone and ask them, people are, I think especially if you're a small creator, people are like, yeah, look at this person, they're trying to like do these videos, yeah, you can use a little bit of my work, and really appreciate being asked. So, you know, it is tough to litigate, obviously, and like you can save a lot of money in the long run. Just you know, spend a little bit. But
prevention is the best medicine.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we approach artists. I love approaching living artists for use of their work, and they're often like, "Hey, great, cool. Let me know when it's live. You know, go for it." And they don't want a fee. It's when their sort of estate goes to a rights management organization, and you know, they're collecting fees that continue their own existence, and then also support the estate of that artist, that it gets more complicated. So I'm in this weird situation where I'm like, well, should I talk about this artist? Well, if they're living, then it's one email. And if they're not, then what do I do? So, I mean, I have had to sort of evolve my own ethics surrounding fair use. I've read a lot about it. It is very confusing. Oh, something's going on back there.
The stage is dropping.
Yeah.
Oh no.
But so I sort of go through cycles where every time I read through, there's lots of codes of best practices for fair use in individual fields that you can search and use. And every time I go through it, I'm like, yes, like I'm totally in the clear. This is fair use. And then like I'll start to doubt it, and then I'll read it again. So I think not only do you have to educate yourself, but you have to continue to weigh those four factors, and it is confusing, but you have to claim personal responsibility and figure out your own best way forward depending on the kind of content you create.
And when it comes to prevention, obviously the best way to ever avoid copyright issues on YouTube is to create content that is exclusively 100% your creation, you in front of a camera, or an animation that you've drawn, sound effects that you've either created yourself or licensed, music that you've paid and licensed. We're using free resources like the YouTube audio library or Kevin MacLeod's music. It's Compotech.com. It's an incredible music library. I've used it exclusively throughout my YouTube work. But provided that that's not possible with the type of content that you want to create, if you want to review movies or music, or you want to talk about celebrities and you want to use photos or images or film clips, what are some methodologies that we can employ to try to avoid stepping into the wrong area? What do we really want to keep in mind? What's some tools and fast, hard things that we can remember?
I would say make sure your work is transformative in nature. And I think there's a lot of debate, and I think that's one of the biggest things in which is debated on YouTube is like what is transformative and what is not. And so what transformative means is that are you transforming that original work into something that's completely unique and something that's completely your own, in which you're not harming the original copyright holder's market? Because ultimately, if you take, like, for instance, an example I've used before are like the reaction channels that you've seen that will take one of your videos and then just kind of sit and watch your video in full. And you've seen a lot of these channels pop up as of recently, or lately. I don't know if any more are popping up. I don't know if they've...
there's one guy, I actually reacted to one of my other videos the other day. The guy's brilliant. What he did is he took a video of him just staring at his laptop for an hour. Not actually reacting to anything, not actually doing anything.
I know, I've seen that.
Staring at his laptop. Then he'll take other videos and then put them over parts of that 1 hour that he originally created, and then he's just pumping them out.
Yeah.
What?
And he never says anything. He doesn't.
What?
He doesn't exit the video. It's just him sitting there, awesome beard, staring at his laptop. He's uploading half of my catalog. He's got more of my videos online than I do right now. Actually.
Wow.
A little bit though, right? There was one chuckle in there.
One hour. I only like this one.
There you go. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not transformative in nature.
No.
Because, and what that means is that he's affecting Boogie's network. He's affecting Boogie's value, essentially. Because no one now has to go to see his channel, not because it's not even up right now, but because no one has a reason to do so, because they're right there watching the full video. So that is a perfect example of harming the original copyright holder's market.
And if I may, let's say that that's something you want to do. You want to review other YouTube channels. You want to be critical of other YouTube channels. One of the things that you'll see reaction channels that we dislike tend to be people that destroy the value of the original work by showing the majority of the video or the entirety of it. But if they only show small clips, and turn you on to that creator, turn you on to that original video, it actually enhances the value. And so, if you're going to be critical of other people on YouTube, leave plenty of the pie for them. That's so important. I didn't mean to interrupt them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is extremely murky because I will show an image of, let's say, a painting on screen. And and then I'll be voiceover talking about it, and I'll show it for 3 seconds, and then maybe I'll show you a detail, and then I'll move on to another image that I need to discuss what I want to say. And some people may say, well, that's, looking at the screen, that's not transformative. And some people joked with me with the case of the Rothko video, like, what if you just put a solid colored square over the image? I'm like, I don't want it. Like, I'm making a video about Rothko.